Hey gang, I wanted to come and share something with you today. The question that I put out there as the title was, are you prepared for success? And really it just came out of some reading that I did this morning. And I thought, that this is a perfect lesson on preparing for success. And it came out of the greatest book on success ever written, and that is the Bible. So I was reading that this morning. If you haven't ever read the Bible, or if you haven't read it in a long time, you're not really sure where in the world to start, just like dust it off. Start maybe in the book of John, or you can message me and I'd be happy to kind of talk to you and help you to figure out where you can start. This morning I was reading in the book of Mark. Mark was one of the disciples of Jesus, and he wrote about a story. Well, there are a lot of stories in the book of Mark, but one of my favorites is in chapter 6. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you, and then I'll let you know kind of what I took away from it this morning when I read it. So starting in verse 30, it says, "The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. They had been sent out 2 by 2 to go kind of test out and try out the things that Jesus had been teaching them and training them to do. So they had been out praying for and seeing the sick healed. They had seen many miracles done. They had seen people set free of all kinds of demons and probably addictions, all kinds of things. Anyway, they came back and they were reporting. And then it says, verse 31, "Then because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest.' So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. 'This is a remote place,' they said, 'and it's already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat.' But he answered, 'You give them something to eat.'" Now just picture these guys, picture how you feel when you come back from a long business trip. And maybe it's been a really great business trip. A lot of good things were accomplished, but you're tired. You just want some peace and quiet. And that's what the disciples thought they were getting. They thought they were going to get some peace and quiet by jumping in the boat with Jesus and heading across the Sea of Galilee. But the people beat them to the other side. And there were always people crowding around and wanting to hear what Jesus had to say, wanting to be healed, bringing sick to him. And so they had kind of had it with the crowds, and they were saying, just let these people go. Let's let them go, and let's let us have some time. And Jesus just says, "No, you give them something to eat." And we're talking about thousands of people. So it was probably crickets for a moment as they kind of cocked their heads like, huh? And so they say, "That would take 8 months of a man's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" So Jesus says to them, "Well, how many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fishes. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. 5 loaves and 2 fishes fed 5,000. And we know that that's probably not counting the women and children that were likely in that crowd as well. So obviously we're talking about a huge miracle that blew the minds of anybody who saw it and knew exactly what was happening. So a couple of things just jumped out at me this morning when I read this. This is one of my favorite stories in the Gospels, and always something new stands out. And I'm sure that those of you who might be listening to this, something else might stick out to you. But I wanted to just share kind of along the lines, as I read this morning, I thought this is such a good lesson for success. Are we prepared for success? So, what are you hoping for? What are you working toward and just, maybe praying for? Is it that new job, that big opportunity? Are you wanting that big account? Is it a person that you're hoping to meet? Is it marriage? You're wanting success in your marriage, in your family? Are you praying for children? Are you wanting to just have help and success in raising your children? Is it a salary that you're hoping to make? Is there just a level of savings that you're trying to get to? Is it influence that you're hoping for? Whatever it is that success means, in this story, success meant, they'd been given a huge, crazy assignment. You give them something to eat. So if you've been given a huge, crazy assignment, you want success. So in the minds of the disciples at that moment, success was feeding these people without going broke, I guess. And so the first thing that I would say in terms of, our hopes and when we're thinking about something that we really want or need is to pray instead of hope. Just go ahead and form that into a prayer and pray in faith. You have a God who designed you. He's given hopes and dreams to you. And maybe I'll share in another video sometime soon how I have gone about sort of figuring out which of my hopes and dreams and desires are really things to go after and which ones really aren't going to get me what I'm hoping that they will get me. And I'll share that with you sometime in the future. But so the first thing, pray instead of hope, and pray in faith, knowing that you have a big God. If he was able to feed 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, he can take your life and make it way more effective and impactful and provide for you better than you can even imagine. The other thing that I love is how in verse 38, Jesus, they're like, dude, we don't have enough food. And he says, well, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. He's like, I'll wait. And so that causes us to think, okay, let's inventory, what do we have? What advantages, resources, and skills do you have? Who do you know? These are the kinds of things that we can go and see what we have. It might not be loaves and fishes, but this is kind of applying it to our lives. And then I love it in verse 39. It just says, then Jesus directed. Jesus directed. Prepare to be successful. So he had them sit down. He told the disciples, have everybody sit down in groups of 50s and 100s. He was preparing for a mass feeding of food that did not yet exist. The disciples were probably thinking, why are we having them sit down? There is nothing to feed these people. But Jesus was already preparing. He was like, well, we have to get ready. If we're going to feed these people, we need to do it in an orderly fashion. We're not going to just have a big mob. I'm not going to just have a ginormous pile of food and just have everybody come, dog pile on trying to grab scraps. Okay, we're going to do this in an orderly fashion. Everybody's going to get full. And it says indeed that all of them ate and were satisfied. So he needed to put structure, and he was preparing. So how do we apply that to our lives? How do we prepare to be successful? Well, it could set up structure that will allow you to be orderly and effective when what you're praying for and working toward occurs. So whether that be education or training, books you need to read, maybe there's research that you need to do, people or organizations that you can network with, whatever it is that would allow you to put the structure together that will make it possible for you to utilize what you've been given and to be effective. That's what you can get busy doing. And then this is something that I often pray for, and it really was taught to me by a former pastor who talked about how he prayed for the gift of administration. And so I pray all the time for that. I pray for that in my home. I pray for that in my marriage, in the raising of my children. I pray for that in teaching. I teach both my children, and then I sometimes have the opportunity to teach elsewhere as well. And I pray for the gift of administration, for insight, understanding, ideas, humility, very important in administration, and people. Who are the people that I need to know, that I need to work alongside? So those are things that I would say. Pray in faith, inventory and bring what you have, prepare to be successful, set up structure and do the work ahead of time that you need to utilize what you're going to be given. Pray for the gift of administration, and then give thanks. And that's what I have to share today. And that's what kind of stuck out to me. And so I thought I would just get on here today and share. And hopefully I'll come back and share something new sometime soon. All right, take care.